Indian Lake. It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Monday, October 2nd. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
All this month, NCPR's news team is telling stories about the state of healthcare in the rural North Country. We start with a story about Medicare and the growing number of older adults who have to navigate it.
10 years from now, 1 out of every 4 New Yorkers will be considered an older adult. That's a seismic demographic shift that will change every aspect of our lives, from the structures of our families and communities to the drivers of our state's economy.
2 people were killed in a plane crash on Sunday at the Lake Placid Airport, and a large-scale search is underway near Glens Falls after a 9-year-old girl went missing while camping with her family. More details coming up.
Also, Governor Kathy Hochul says New York's ongoing migrant crisis will likely require a large amount of money in the new state budget.
We know that we'll have to hit at least a baseline of what we've done before. We're making commitments that'll go into the future. And so we're making those estimates right now, but it'll be substantial.
And we'll sit down with a Franklin County man who has been dubbed the Poet Laureate of Dickinson Center. All of that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by the Village Mercantile, bringing Saranac Lake to places beyond the Adirondacks, offering Adirondack-made and inspired goods. VillageMerc.com, anything but general. And by Apothecary Chocolates, making gourmet chocolates by hand from all natural herbs, botanicals, and tree syrups. ApothecaryChocolates.com.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. A large-scale search is underway for a missing 9-year-old girl who was last seen Saturday evening in Moreau Lake State Park, southwest of Glens Falls. Charlotte Senna was camping with her family at the park over the weekend. Around dinner time Saturday, she was riding her bike with some friends when she decided to do one last loop by herself. Her mother reported her missing to police around 6:45 Saturday evening. Police said it was possible the 9-year-old girl was abducted. More than 100 people joined the search on Sunday, including police, forest rangers, and civilians. Charlotte was last seen wearing an orange tie-dye Pokemon shirt, dark blue pants, black Crocs, and a gray bike helmet. She has dirty blonde hair and is about 4'6" and weighs about 90 pounds.
2 people were killed in a plane crash on Sunday at the Lake Placid Airport. A small single-engine Cessna was taking off from the runway when the crash occurred. According to the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, Russ Francis and Richard McSpadden were the only 2 people on board. Francis was a former tight end in the NFL and had recently bought the Lake Placid Airways Scenic Tour bus. McSpadden was the senior vice president of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. Officials from the National Safety Transportation Board are expected to be on scene today. It's unclear what caused the fatal plane crash.
Feeling healthy can mean the difference between a good day and a bad day, or a month, or years. So healthcare is at the center of our lives, economy, and society.
All this month, NCPR's news team is telling stories about the state of healthcare in the rural North Country, the pain when it doesn't work and the joy and relief when it does. We'll be talking about consolidation of healthcare across the region, about the struggle to pay the bills, about nursing shortages and the mental health crisis, and solutions that healthcare professionals are making happen despite limited resources.
In the part of the world we live in, a lot of healthcare is for seniors. Roughly a quarter of the North Country's residents are over the age of 65. That's about twice the state average. One of the big barriers to quality health care for older adults is education, especially around navigating insurance. Amy Fay-Resl reports.
On a sunny weekday afternoon, about a half dozen people filed into the Dubinsky Recreation Center in Ogdensburg. They're here for Medicare 101.
Just let me know if you can't hear me. So my name is Cindy Ayer. I work at the Office for the Aging for St. Lawrence County.
Ayer runs these sessions all over the county. She passes out a paper packet, and at first, it's pretty simple. At 65, you get Medicare A and B.
Okay, and this is what your Medicare card looks like. That's what your A and B would be on. That's what the government is providing.
Then it starts to get complicated. You need to choose between a Medigap supplement or an Advantage plan. There are dozens of choices. AIR passes out more handouts. There's Plan D and C and F. There are 19 different drug plans. The questions start to come fast and furious.
United Healthcare, AARP, what was the other one you said?
Excellus.
If you're getting Social Security.
As baby boomers continue to age into Medicare, AIR is going to hold a lot more of these sessions. By 2030, there will be about 70 million Americans older than 65, about double the number there were in 2010. More seniors means a greater need for healthcare services, but also for information. Medicare is notoriously difficult to navigate. That's why Ogdensburg native Leon Montroy came here today.
Because you need a PhD in trying to understand it?
Montroy and his wife are both 64. When his wife retires next year, they'll get kicked off her work insurance. He can't believe how complicated Medicare is.
But I worked in healthcare, so I understand a lot of the insurance language. I don't know how some older people do it. It's confusing.
But these are also really important decisions with big consequences, like quality of care and medical bankruptcy. AIR says you need to compare prescription drug prices on different plans. Make sure your doctors are in network. It's easy to make the wrong decision, says Montroy.
My wife's parents get confused. But they thought they were paying too much for a Medigap plan, and so they went to WellCare.
Montroy says his in-laws recently switched to a free monthly plan, thinking they'd save money.
But now they're getting all these bills.
Panicked switching is a big issue, says AIR. She says older adults are bombarded with mailers and TV ads that all advertise the perfect plan. AIR says that doesn't exist. She stressed this several times.
If you're happy with your current coverage, you do not have to do anything.
This is what AIR does, help folks navigate the maze, help people use the computer. But AIR is the only Medicare counselor in St. Lawrence County. She serves 26,000 adults. That'll be 29,000 in 3 years.
Which is a really rapid increase for certainly a rural, impoverished county.
That's Andrea Montgomery, the director of St. Lawrence County's Office of the Aging. I asked if they're ready for the so-called silver tsunami.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I would say the answer to that is we're not ready at the federal, state, or local level. I mean, certainly locally we're doing everything we can with the limited resources that are available.
Montgomery says the county needs more infrastructure, more nursing homes, more home health aides, more doctors, and more Medicare counselors like Cindy Eyre.
Oh my goodness, I don't even know if I can quantify. If I could have 10 high-cap counselors and we could do as many in-person appointments, I think it would be remarkable for the citizens of the county.
What's in the way is funding. They get around $40,000 federal and state dollars a year for AIR's position. St. Lawrence County makes up the difference, but it isn't exactly rolling in cash. And the story is the same in other rural New York counties. Most have one Medicare counselor. But as more and more adults turn 65, the need will only grow. People in government are thinking about this. Adam Herbst is deputy commissioner at the New York State Department of Health.
10 years from now, 1 out of every 4 New Yorkers will be considered an older adult. That's a seismic demographic shift that will change every aspect of our lives, from the structures of our families and communities to the drivers of our state's economy.
Herbst also chairs the New York State Master Plan for Aging, an initiative created last year by Governor Kathy Hochul. The end product will be a 2025 report of suggested proposals. That all sounds a bit dry, but we're talking about big changes to how the state structures and funds healthcare, housing, and home care.
Whether in the state budget, whether regulatory, legislatively, and at the local level, the community level, how it actually helps changing to an age-friendly perspective.
But all that change is at least a few years down the road. Right now in Ogdensburg, folks are weighing if they can afford a higher monthly plan that covers more versus paying nothing monthly, but a lot if they get sick. These are really tricky calculations, since many seniors are living on $800 to $1,000 a month or less in this county. It turns into a sort of group think session at one point.
And then it pays 90% of what the insurance does.
Lynn Pagano left the session with a stack of paper handouts.
Yeah, and the scary thing is that you don't know what your health is going to be.
Pagano is 73 and currently on her husband's insurance, but he's over a decade older than her.
And he's got health issues, so what will I do if something happens to him and I lose his? Then I have to make a decision for myself.
She came here to try and understand what her options will be when that day comes.
So I wanted to get some clarification.
Did you get that?
I think so, and if not, I know where to call.
She'll call Cindy Eyre alongside 26,000 other seniors. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio, Ogdensburg.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 10 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up, we'll meet Jim Burry, the Poet Laureate of Dickinson Center. That conversation coming up in just a few minutes right here on Northern Light.
We've got some areas of fog this morning, some thick fog in some parts of the region. The Weather Service says it should burn off in the next few hours, and the forecast is calling for sunshine across the region today and warm temperatures, highs in the 70s, near 80 this afternoon, light winds out of the east-southeast. Music by Mark Corey out of Watertown. Check out more of his music on our website. We have the Underscore Project, which features music by a number of regional artists. You can check it out anytime at ncpr.org/underscore. Northern Light is supported by Adirondack Experience, the museum on Blue Mountain Lake, hosting a variety of creative workshops on select dates throughout the month. Learn more at theadkx.org.
A Rochester man has been accused of smuggling 3 people into the United States from Canada across the St. Lawrence River. Early last month, U.S. Border Patrol and the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office received a call about a possible smuggling near Morristown, according to WWNY-TV. Authorities stopped a minivan on Route 37 and apprehended 3 passengers with Vietnamese passports and Canadian visas. None of them had the necessary documentation to be in the U.S. The car's driver could be sentenced up to 10 years in prison if he's found guilty of smuggling.
Governor Kathy Hochul is continuing to urge the federal government to help New York manage the ongoing arrival of tens of thousands of asylum seekers to the state. Speaking yesterday on CBS's Face the Nation, Hochul said Congress should limit the number of migrants allowed into the country at the southern border.
It's in our DNA to welcome immigrants, but there has to be some limits in place, and Congress has to put more controls at the border, and not in this budget threat, shutdown threat. Talk about eliminating positions for Border Patrol when we actually need to double or quadruple those numbers.
As Karen DeWitt reports, the governor is also urging the state legislature to allocate a substantial amount of money to the migrant crisis in the new state budget.
The budget plan is not due until January, but Hochul says she and her aides are mapping out the details now. The state has already spent $1.7 billion, including $1 billion to reimburse New York City's costs in housing and feeding the migrants. And Hochul said in a memo to President Biden asking for help that the costs in the next year could reach $4.5 billion.
How much money will I need in next year's budget? We know that we'll have to hit at least a baseline of what we've done before. We're making commitments that'll go into the future. And so we're making those estimates right now, but it'll be substantial.
The governor says the state is now paying for 45% of costs to shelter the asylum seekers, including at unused space in the state-run Creedmoor Psychiatric Center in Queens and the former U.S. Naval Air Base Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn. She says the state is also providing millions of dollars in funding to legal service providers to expedite the asylum seekers' paperwork and to staff a portal at the State Department of Labor. It will match migrants and potential employers once the asylum seekers from Venezuela obtain their expedited work permits, which were authorized by the Biden administration. Plus, New York is also funding 2,200 National Guard posts to help with the migrants.
None of it was projected, but we had to meet the needs. That's what we did. That's why we set aside money, so we can be responsive when a crisis happens.
Hochul says there's always a chance that fewer migrants could seek border crossings in the coming months, or that the president and Congress could come up with policies to ease the situation. But she says the state needs to be prepared going forward for the crisis to continue for a while. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
Keep up with news from NCPR throughout the day at our website, ncpr.org, and follow the station on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, we'll follow a Franklin County man's journey from being a used car salesman to becoming a poet. That conversation in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note. Crows can recognize individual faces. We'll hear more just ahead at 8:42. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
Summer-like conditions, but we're starting off with some pretty thick fog in some parts of the region. This morning, the Weather Service says that should burn off the next couple of hours. And sunny and highs in the 70s, near 80 this afternoon. East-southeast winds around 5 to 10 miles per hour. Look for clear skies tonight, lows in the 50s, and then warmer tomorrow, highs upper 70s, low 80s. On Tuesday and Wednesday with mostly sunny skies, partly cloudy Thursday and Friday. Maybe a chance of some showers on Friday and a little cooler with highs upper 60s, low 70s on Friday, but highs near 80 for the next few days, and then mostly sunny skies in the afternoons. Right now we've got fog, 55 degrees here in Canton. Jim Burry has had a lot of jobs. He's a veteran. He's sold used cars. He's a former plumbing wholesaler. And all of that has helped his new profession, the Poet Laureate of Dickinson Center in Franklin County. His latest poems are all about the legacy of the mining community of Lion Mountain. He sat down with Mitch Tyke at a coffee shop in Malone to discuss how exactly he came to become a published poet in his 60s and how the North Country landscape continues to inspire his work.
It's really easy to imagine poets plying their trade in places like, maybe Paris or London or Brooklyn or even like Burlington, Vermont. Is there a poetry to northern New York and rural America that you don't think people appreciate?
I do. The North Country, it's loaded. And there are some recognized poets, but most of us up here, we don't get, even the academics don't get too much recognition. So, and I'm nowhere near academic. So,
well, and I wonder if there's a certain inspiration for poetry that's maybe closer to the surface in a place like rural America.
Well, first of all, you have nature, of course, but you also have a lot of hard times up here. So that's an inspiring thing, too. So
yeah, and speaking of hard times, I gather one of the projects you're working on right now is about is a history project, a history poetry project about a particular community that's really kind of experienced hard times over the years.
I'm working on a thematic collection of poems. Has to do with the Lion Mountain Standish area. It's hopefully I'm trying to capture the voices of a lot of the people that went through the rise and the fall, which was actually it fell back in the 60s. It was 1967 when it went down.
What's your hope for what comes out of that?
A little bit of history, but I want to show the experience of first of all, the early miners it was a really, really hard place to live. It was very, very difficult. But they kind of tamed it was like a Wild West. So I want to tell that story. But then there was some great prosperity for several years. World War II, the mining community was really, really prosperous. And it was a good place to work if you could get through the conditions of being underground and so forth. Then there was a decline, and I've been talking to quite a few people who lived through that part of it, and there was a fear, there was an underlying fear of what's coming next, you know. So I want to try and tell that story. I think it's an important story of a rise and fall of a small community. I think it needs to be heard. Yeah.
You know, I don't know if there's a typical way that someone becomes a poet, but you've sort of fallen into this life later in your chronology.
Yeah, quite a bit. I've always written, but I never tried to get anything published, and then life kind of got in the way. Had to earn a living. And I came out of the Air Force in 1968. I went to work for a bank. I was a banker. Stuck with that for a while. And I was in industrial sales. I traveled. Actually, this was part of my territory at one time up here in the North Country. Then I was, I was part owner of a music store for a while. I became interested in car sales. I was a car salesman for a while. But then I went into the plumbing and heating and air conditioning wholesale business, and that's where I ended up for my last 20 years or so.
Is there poetry in wholesale plumbing?
Sure.
Is any of it in any of these chapbooks?
Yes, actually, yes. There's I have 2 poems about pipe that I can think of off the top of my head. And yeah, there all these things enter into a poet's life. Everything that an honest poet will write about what he knows, of course, and that's what we're doing every day.
Jim Burry is the author of several books of poetry, including Out There and Back Again. His latest project explores the history of the mining community of Lion Mountain. Before we go, we want to hear one of Jim's poems. It's called A Career.
Black iron pipe, stacked by diameter, the smallest tight around my little finger. I could poke my head into the largest, but all the sizes were long, over 20 heavy feet each. My first job was to move the stacks. My second was to cut the pipe into equally measured pieces and machine threads on every end. We called those finished pieces nipples. I don't know why. They offered no sustenance or pleasure. In time, I no longer had to do hot, dirty work. It became my task to buy and sell the steel and copper and plastic lengths. I sold it by the truckload. Fancy that. Miles and miles of pipe carrying liquids, gases, and wastes of all kinds. And though it all got me somewhere, in the end, I had barely moved.
Jim Burry and his poem, A Career. He spoke with Mitch Teich on a recent episode of the Northwards podcast from NCPR. You can find the full conversation and hear a poem from Jim at ncpr.org/northwards.
You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. It's just about 8:25. I'm Monica Sandreski here with the wonderful Todd Moe. And there are so many things going on throughout the community this week. With all the sunny skies and warm weather, maybe you're looking for a good hike to do this week. Jeff Manns with the Glens Falls Saratoga chapter of the Adirondack Mountain Club has a recommendation. He's a big fan of the area near Scroon Lake and loves the history of the mountains. He suggests you try the 3 Peaked Hills near Hoffman Mountain.
You go in, you kind of follow an old woods road, And then that is also a bushwhack, and you're following streams, and you can see some old logging roads, and there's an old cast iron logging camp stove that's there. There's lots of places that you can go around there where there's a lot of remnants from when logging was prevalent in the Adirondacks. You'll see cables, you'll see cast iron stuff, you'll see stoves. So you know that you're walking in areas and traveling in areas that other people have been before. And they offer in their own way, maybe not as expansive views as you'll find in the Adirondack High Peaks, but there's lots of really nice views and pretty scenery. And just like from Jones Hill, it's a fairly moderate, easy hike. And you're looking at Hoffman, but you're also looking north past Hoffman, and you're looking at the Dix Range, like Macomb. It's great to get out there. There's really a lot there in that area in Schroon Lake and in Blue Ridge and Boreas. And there's a lot to do that I haven't even done yet, but you can only do one at a time.
He says if you'd like a guided hike, the Adirondack Mountain Club does have a few upcoming outings this week through the Dix Range and Tabletop. You can find out more at adk.org.
Or maybe you'd prefer something indoors. We are media sponsor for a concert by Grammy Award-winning guitarist William Cannongeiser coming up Saturday, October 7th, this coming Saturday, 7:30 p.m. at the Keene Valley Congregational Church. It's presented by the East Branch Friends of the Arts. You can find ticket information on our website, ncpr.org/calendar. Here's some music. This is guitarist William Cannongeiser with Henry Mancini's Sunflower. Music by Henry Mancini and performed there by guitarist William Cannongeiser. You can catch him in concert this Saturday night, October 7th, 7:30 at the Keene Valley Congregational Church. The concert is presented by East Branch Friends of the Arts, and we've got more information on our website, ncpr.org/calendar. That's it for Northern Light.
Morning Edition continues in just a minute. Coming up, we'll hear about the winner of the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. It's being awarded to two scientists whose work enabled the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. That story just ahead from Rob Stein, coming up on Morning Edition. Then join us later this morning on 1A for an important conversation on hip-hop. It's more than music, it's also a style, and its relationship to high-end fashion has been fraught and lucrative. That story is now being told for the first time, and that's next time on 1A between 10 and noon right here on NCPR. I'm Monica Sandreski.
I'm Todd Moe. Thanks for listening. Be well.